Alright, hello guys. Today we're going to be going over just homework 7. And so this problem is kind of divided into 3 parts, so we'll just take it one by one, show you my solution for all 3, and let's just jump right into it. So hopefully you guys are able to do this first part, which is like the number part. So make an array filled with random integers, let the user choose how long it is, and then count the number of zeros. So let me go ahead and show you what I have for that. So the first couple lines are just some counter variables. So these are just for while loops, and then this is for our counting zeros because we have to count zeros.
Doctor, you told me to do this for a candy bar.
Cool. Thanks, Trent. Okay. So anyways, these are for counting zeros. And then we're just going to ask the user how long of an array would you like. We've created an easy reader up here. And then in value is input.readInt. So you want to make sure you do readInt and not read word, because if you do read word, it will be a string and you won't be able to like use it as an integer and count with it. So readInt, and then we're going to make an int array, and it's going to be, the length is going to be in value, which like I said is why we need to be readInt. And then so we have our counter variable x is less than in value because in value is that length, rand of x. So okay, so the index of rand with the value of x, so first it's going to be 0, then 1, then 2, so on and so forth, as long as it's less than in value, is going to be a random number from 0 to 9, which is exactly what we want. And then if that number, if the index of x is a 0, we're going to add 1 to our 0 counters there, and then we're going to, of course, add 1 to x to keep our counter going up. And then next, we're just going to have, well, y is less than the length of our array. We're going to output the index of y. So first, again, 0, 1, 2, so on and so forth. We're going to add 1 to y. So this is just for printing it out. Then we're going to create a line break there. And then if zeros is 1, this is me, again, being a grammar nerd. We're going to do with like is and 0. So if we only have 1, we're going to do the correct grammar for having singular 1, and otherwise system.outprint there are this many zeros in the array. So once again, this is the really important part. We're just going to print there are, and then whatever our 0 counter ends up being plus zeros in the array. So if we just run this real quick, oops, that's the wrong one. 0 counter, if we just go ahead and run this. And then, yeah, like I said, you need the canvas window because we have to do canvas.ran for random numbers. So we'll put an array with 7 numbers, and there are 2 zeros. There are, in fact, 2 zeros in that array. So that's kind of the basic part of that homework. Hopefully that helps. So let's move on to the next step. And then, so the extra challenge is moving all the zeros to one end of the array. So here's a sample output. It's the same array, and then except that the zeros are at the end. And then, so if you have trouble, we're going to use 2 arrays first, and then I'll tackle the super challenge, which is just with 1 array. So we'll start with the 2 arrays, which is, okay, here. So again, we have an easy reader. Ask the user how long do we want the array. Int length is input.readInt, and then we have some counter variables here for our while loops, and then we have 2 int arrays, both with length of whatever the user put. And then, so while x is less than val.length, so the name of our array is val, and val.length is a method that arrays have. It just returns however long it is, so however many indexes it has. So for this one, like let's say I put 7, then val.length is going to give us 7, so it's the exact same thing as with this one, just putting in value. So there you go. So while x is less than however long the array is, we're going to do the index of val, that is x. We're going to give it a random value from 0 to 9, add to keep our counter going. Tell the user this is the original array. Again, we're going to print it out with a while loop here, and this time I just did length. See, you can see it, either way is fine. And then, so we're going to print it out, and then while I, which is another counter variable, is less than length. So this is where the program really happens. So all we've done so far is just created an array with random numbers 0 to 9. So if val of index I does not equal 0, so if it's anything but 0, so this exclamation mark in a Boolean, we talked about it in my period, but if you guys haven't talked about it yet, if you have an exclamation mark in a Boolean, it's kind of like an Uno reverse card, I guess. It's like, it does the opposite of what you think it does. So we're used to seeing this, the double equal sign, for if val of I equals 0, but I want if it's anything except 0, so it does not equal 0. And the reason that this exists is because, like, yes, with numbers, actually no, you can't. They're an infinite number of numbers, so I can't really have if val equals 0 and then another one for if val equals 1 and 2, like so on and so forth. So we're just going to say if it's anything except 0. Then so here's our second array. And then the index of I2, and right now I2 starts at 0, becomes, so like that's the first one. The first time we go through this loop becomes whatever this is. So if we have an array, right, let me just run this so I can kind of visually explain it. Get to the right folder here. So if we run this, we'll have an array of like 6 numbers here. Oh, there were no zeros on that one. My bad, hold on. Okay, there we go. So if we're doing this, right, and we have, minimize that. So if val of I does not equal 0, so it doesn't equal 0, then we're going to have our second array of the first one. So remember, I2 is a different number that starts at 0, becomes val of the one we just checked. So 6 drops to there. And then we're going to add to I2 so that we're going to the next value of val2 the next time we enter this loop. Then we're just going to add 1 to I++. So if it is 0, we get to the third one and it is 0, we ignore it. We just leave it alone. And then what ends up happening is that we have this array of val2 with, so in this one, it has 6 defined values, and then the one at the very end just left undefined for now. But that's okay. We're going to fix that. Oh, no. Oh, okay. That's right. Because in the arrays, if you don't declare it to be anything, it just automatically is 0. So, like, for this one, we drop the 6, drop the 8, and then it is a 0, so we don't enter this if statement. So, like, we just kind of skip over it, drop the 6 here, drop another 6 there, drop the 9, drop the 5, and so we have 6, and then the last one is undeclared, but instead of being, like, nothing, it's just automatically 0. So then we have our last one is 0 right there. So that's kind of how that works. And then this, again, this bottom while loop is just printing it. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. This is the really important line here, is reassigning the index of I2 from val2 of val of index I. So then that's how you do it with 2 arrays. And then okay, so then the last thing we have to talk about is the super challenge here. Super challenge. And then, so we're just going to do what we just did, but we're going to do it with 1 array. So let me go ahead and close this window here. And then we will take a look at the super challenge, which is, oh, it was on it, my bad. Okay, so one more time. Easy reader, how long do you want the array? Dot read int, new int, array, only 1 this time, and a bunch of counter values. So again, the second one, we didn't have a 0 counter. We didn't have a 0 counter. This time we're going to have a 0 counter again. And then some counter variables for a while loops. And then, so while a is less than the length of our array, rand of a. Okay, so then this again is just creating and filling the array with random numbers from 0 to 9 and then printing them out. And then the next time we go through is, so this is the really important while loop here. So we're just going to start with b because b is 0. If rand of b equals 0, so if it's a 0, we're going to add to our 0 counter. And otherwise, what we're going to do is rand of d equals rand of b. So let me kind of explain this a little bit. So if we go to super challenge. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but anyways, if I run this like I was saying, get rid of the canvas window. Don't close it though, because that, like, you have to minimize it because otherwise it ends the program. So how long of an array would you want? We'll just do 7 again. And okay, perfect. There's 2 zeros. So those zeros end up at the end, and you can see that besides that we have the same order. So back to this. If we do, so rand of d, and d is at 0 the first time we go through this, even if b is not, So the first time through, we just drop, so it's not a 0. So like I said, rand of D and rand of B the first time through are the same. So rand of 0 and rand of 0, of course, are the same, but so the 4 just becomes another 4, whatever. So then we add 1 to D. So the next time we go to D, it'll be 1, and it'll be looking at the second one. And then we're going to add 1 to B just to keep our counter going. So then if rand of B is a 0, and this time it is, so we're going to add 1 to our 0 counter. We're going to ignore this, so we're not going to deal with D. We're not going to add 1 to D. We're not going to reassign anything. We just add 1 to our 0 counter. We're going to add 1 to B. So this time, again, rand of B is not a 0. So then we're going to reassign rand of D, which is rand of 1, which right now is a 0. We're going to make it rand of B, which is a 3. So the array at this point is 4, 3, 3, 6, 5, 3, 0. And then if you do that all the way through, it moves all of these over. And then we still have these last two, though, are still 5, 3 because we've already defined them. So with the last one, we just left it because it was a second array. It was an empty array. It was all zeros. We didn't have to, like, change the last ones, but this ones have already been defined. Oh, actually, this one is 0. This one's 0, but this one's a 3. So we have to make sure that we fix it and change these last two to zeros, or however many zeros there are. If there's 5 zeros, we got to change the last 5. If there's 3, you see what I'm saying. So let's go down here to, okay, so then this is, we're going to assign C to rand.length minus 0. So for this one, rand.length is 7. Minus zeros, and zeros is 2. We counted 2 zeros, so that's going to be 5. C is 5. So while C, which is 5, is less than rand.length, rand of C, so we're starting, instead of starting at 0 the way we have every other time we've done a command like this time we're just starting at 5. So, and then we're just reassigning it to 0. So if we go to 5, it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We want that to be 0. We're going to add 1 to C. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a 0. It already was, but they won't always end in 0, so that becomes a 0. And then suddenly C is the same as rand.length, so we exit this while loop, create a line break, and we're going to print it out. So that's how that works. You just have to kind of reassign within the array with 2 different counter variables in this if statement to make sure that you're kind of going backwards a little bit in the array and reassigning the ones that were zeros to the number that comes after it, and then putting those zeros at the end. Hopefully that all makes sense. Shout out to my brother for that cameo, I guess. And yeah, just let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Just hit me up and I will do my best to get back to you. Thanks.